Hello,
Hello, good morning, good afternoon to you.
how are
You
you?
doing? I'm so happy to have you with us today. Isn't it beautiful that we can have this technology and to
Yes,
be
it's
connected?
amazing.
Yes, it is. Tama, do you want to share with us
Hello,
and
Thomas.
say also hello and welcome to everybody here on the room with us? Do you want to share with us where you're located actually?
Right now, I'm participating from my
Right now,
home and home office
taking
in
part from my
Heidelberg,
home.
Germany.
In Germany.
Yes, so I can say to the people so you that they heard French and English, and let's see if it does. It seems to be okay actually because it also gives me the opportunity to welcome Nikki, who is our translator. So it seems okay. Yes, now Thomas from Germany, and do you want to say which part of Germany?
Yes, today I'm participating from my home, which is in Heidelberg in Germany. Sometimes I'm in Zurich, Switzerland, sometimes in Heidelberg, Germany. Heidelberg is near the French border, so it's about 80 kilometers from Alsace. And the next French
Yeah.
city here is, I guess, Wissembourg.
Wissembourg. Thank you. Yes, Heidelberg is, by the way, beautiful city with a fleuve. We say in French, a river and a mountain and beautiful shops like a old downtown. Is it?
Yes, that is right.
Yes. So, Thomas, thank you for these words. And let me introduce you a little bit to our people who do listen to us, actually. So, you are a systemic and constellation expert. You are a lecturer, and we have a chance to have with us today. Also, an advisor and a coach, and advisor in many fields, as we will be able to see with you today. You gave seminars and workshops for international audiences, and you served as a lecturer and course leader at Hellinger Sciencia. Tema, would you like to tell us a little bit what is Hellinger Sciencia?
Yes, a little bit. So maybe some of you know or have heard the name Bert Hellinger. Bert Hellinger was the founder of the field of family constellations. And later in his life, so he started, yeah, I can say in the last century. No? So I happened to meet him during my very first encounter in family constellation about a little bit more than 20 years ago. Right in the first seminar with him. I didn't even know who he was, and I was immediately touched. And later on, he founded Hellinger Sciencia together with his wife, Sophie Hellinger. And they founded also the Hellinger Schule, which is a school for educating people about family constellations and the new way of doing family constellations. I was fortunate to learn directly from Bert Hellinger the way of working. And yeah, I graduated from University Jean Monnet in combination with the Hellinger School, which was really cool. And later on, the Hellinger Sciencia asked me to become a lecturer for them. So I held various international webinars, seminars, in-person seminars. I'm so tuned to webinars right now. I forget that we had a life before the pandemic. No?
Indeed.
Right.
And so, yeah, you were able to represent Hellinger Sciencia and also to do your own work because you developed a lot of tools also specifically for businesses and organizations, and it led you to travel through the world. Do you want to give us a few destinations where you had a huge audience following you and the seminars?
Yes. Sometimes a lot of people, no? So I was very, very fortunate and very happy to give seminars in Brazil, for example. We made tours to several cities, but mainly in São Paulo, but also in other parts in Brasilia, Curitiba, Florianopolis, etc. And then also a lot of seminars in China, which is really on the other side of the globe, if you want. But interestingly, the same dynamics actually happened also in China. So there, sometimes the audiences were very large. So one occasion, I remember we had several hundred live participants, and that was really a very intense dynamic in the seminar, for
Can
example.
you imagine 700 participants? That's I can't imagine completely, by the way, because when we met during a seminar of Bert Hellinger and Sophie
Yes.
Hellinger in Germany, in Bad Reichenhall.
Yes.
And there were, if I remember well, around 200 people from around the world.
Yeah,
in this
that's
seminar,
already
which
a
was
lot.
already huge. It was already a lot. So 700, that's quite a lot for opening the field of information.
Right.
Congratulations to you. Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment. And so you combined in your work spirit mind with rational mind. I like it because we need both of them, right?
Of
Yeah.
course. Mm-hmm.
Of course. And your focus areas do include innovation and renewal. And you have beautiful meditations, let's say guidelines for reflections about renewal. And you do also focus on organizational constellations and transgenerational aspects in families and organizations. It's a topic very interesting because we know that many businesses are transmitted, inherited, and we know that it's a certain approach that can help people to succeed or to continue to succeed. So we know we'll find with you tomorrow also. We have a chance to have you tomorrow again with us, and then that you will be the voice for clients and organizations. And today, being also the voice for ancestors, past, and historical events. Thomas, I will give you the lead for right now because I know you prepared well an experience with the people and how you want to talk about this topic.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for having me on this interesting panel and in the conference. Thank you for organizing it. Thank you for participating, everybody who is here. And
Thank you, Thomas.
I'm very happy that we have time for two topics. So today I want to talk one topic and tomorrow we're shifting a little bit into some practical applications. No? Yes, so maybe I can share something with you. Could you maybe allow me to share my screen?
Yes. So now we'll talk about touching circles, family constellations, about historical events.
Yes. So let me know if you can see the screen.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Today I want to talk about a very new topic, which I started to explore already many years ago, but I never really had the chance to talk about this more broadly, only as part of the ongoing work that I was doing. But I thought in light of this interesting event, I would put together some thoughts and some initial thoughts about how to work in this field of our families, ancestors, and our work. And the name of this new work stream is called Touching Circles. And I will explain in a moment how I came up with this idea. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, I'd like to share with you my own peculiar experience, a kind of a strange experience that led me to this topic. And then I want to put this a little bit more broader into the context of a systemic perspective and share some insights and also some example demonstrations in how I'm working with this topic as of today. And then if time permits, of course, we have, I can share some resources. So for those of you who want to explore this further, I'll share some information about this, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So the story actually starts some years ago. So this is the year 2010. And this is a picture I took from one of the old bridges in Prague.
In
or
Czech Republic.
Praha, as it's called.
Yes.
And
Beautiful.
so I was on my way to a new work, and that was in the year 2010, roughly. And I basically started a new job there. I was coming from, I worked previously for some years in the United States and then in Germany and with various companies. And then I found myself working in Prague. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. How do I end up working in Prague? It was not really on my plan actually to work there, but it just happened this way. So for those of you who don't know where Prague is, in the past it used to be Czechoslovakia. Now these are two states, so the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic, and Prague is here in the heart of Czechia, as it's called in English, or the Czech Republic. And for those of you who don't know where the Czech Republic is, that is actually somewhere here in the middle of continental Europe, right? Actually, it was interesting because some days, some weeks when I started my work into the job, I happened to stand in front of a wall. I was just waiting for a meeting to get started, and there was a map of the Czech Republic. And I looked at the map and said, oh, it's quite interesting. And then something caught my eye. And then I realized when I took a closer look at the Czech Republic, I saw, oh, this is actually neighboring to Germany. This is Bavaria. So actually, this is the city of Nuremberg, Regensburg, Bayreuth, etc. I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting, because I had the belief that Prague would not be here in the middle, but somewhere here, let's say, behind Budapest, somewhere between Hungary and Romania. So excuse me for my ignorance there, but I was actually surprised. And then I realized, okay, here's my home, there's Prague. Maybe I could go by car. So that led me to explore this a little bit further. And instead of flying to Prague, which was usually also taking a lot of time, I thought, okay, I just go with my car. And I found, okay, it's almost a straight line leads me to the Czech Republic, to Prague. Okay.
Oh, but how long? How long by driving?
Well, it's about 500 kilometers now. So
Okay.
depends on, I always say it depends on who is driving when, but sometimes faster, sometimes not so fast. And when I actually arrived in Prague, and this was the street where I was living, and the name of this street was called Slezská ulice. It's in Czech. And I still had no idea what this is. Prague, by the way, it's a beautiful city. They call it the Paris of the East. And since the Velvet Revolution, it was actually blooming and flourishing. A lot of buildings were renovated. So I was living in this street, somewhere here in this building, there in the third floor, at a nice view. And one day I asked my colleague and I said, Slezská ulice, what does that mean? And she said, well, that means Silesian Street or Schlesienstraße. I said, oh, that's quite interesting, because I remember my parents were born in Silesia.
Indeed.
For those of you who may not have the historical context, but after the Second World War, or before the Second World War, Silesia was part of Germany, and then after the war, Silesia was going to become part of Poland. And so the families basically were emigrating from there, and my family was migrating to West Germany at that time. So it was kind of interesting. I didn't much notice about this, but then another day I stand in front of this map again, and I said, kind of interesting. Let's see what else is there to see. And then I found another interesting insight, and I saw this city up here. And I thought, aha, Jelenia Góra, what is that? I must have heard about that. Sounds so familiar. So I was Googling, and sure enough, I found that this used to be a German city, and that was the place where my parents were born. So this is now, here you can see the border. This is Germany, this is Poland. This is the border between Czech Republic in a nice hilly area. And I thought, oh, it's actually quite near. So now that I have my car here with me, why don't I go to visit this place? So sure enough, next weekend, I went over these mountains. By the way, they're called the Giant Mountains. They're really, really high for this part of the country. You know? And then a day later, I found myself in Silesia. And this is a picture I took from Silesia. This is actually the city where my mother was born. A very small city. There's actually a small castle. And her family, they were farmers. They had farmland there. And I was surprised. The first thing that I realized was, oh, this looks like my hometown where I was born. And then suddenly I almost get like goosebumps when I say this today again. I realized the place that my father chose for the family, to build the family, was resembling very much the home of my parents, you know, where they were born.
I see. Incredible.
Yeah,
and
it was.
You visited for the first time in Silesia was the first time right after the Prague. So meaning you never visited before. Okay.
Yeah, it was absolutely the first time. I had no idea, not sure what to expect. Actually, I arrived there in the evening. In the morning, I opened the window. I had this big smile on my face, and I didn't know what was happening with me. No? But I thought, oh, wow, this is really interesting what's happening here. And then I became more and more interested to explore a little bit more. The first thing that was really important for me, I don't know why, but I wanted to put my hands on the ground where my ancestors lived in the past. And so this was my first touching experience in the spirit of touching circles. And somehow this circle of my family came to a close and a new cycle actually began. So this is a picture, it's a selfie that I took because I wanted to capture this moment, and it was important.
Now that you say, wow.
And yeah, so a little bit of systemic perspective, I think at this point in time might be useful, because when I was driving home from my first visit there, and I spent many more visits. So every time I could, I was going over the mountains to take a look and experience the landscape in different settings, in winter, spring, summer, fall, because I wanted to get a feeling how it is. And it gave me a new appreciation. But during one of these journeys, I realized that there was something that happened 2 years before, and I suddenly realized what was happening. So 2 years ago, before this event, I was participating in one of these large international training congregations where we were practicing family constellation under the guidance of Bert Hellinger. It was very intense, super interesting. And I remember there was one where we were asked to work in groups of 4 people. So one was representing himself or herself, the other one representing the past, and another one the future, and another one representing the birthplace of the parents.
Indeed.
And I realized this suddenly, and I knew exactly what was happening when it was my turn, about my experience. Because as everybody, I started this movement basically from the past. So it's a very slow movement where you go from your past towards your future. And somewhere there is this birthplace of the family. And I remember exactly that somewhere in the middle, I got stuck. And for some reason, it was this birthplace of my parents that captured my attention. And I thought, what the heck? What would I do there? I mean, I left home when I was 18 and I traveled the world. I had no intentions to go back to the family birthplace. But what I didn't realize at that time, that was 2 years before my first trip, was that wasn't really where I was born, but where my parents were born, where the ancestors come from, etc. So I remember this constellation or this exercise unfolded kind of in a peculiar way. And I couldn't make any sense out of it because I somehow got a different perspective, and I was looking from this birthplace of my parents towards my past, or the past of the family, the family tribe, if you want, and also towards the future. But after all, it all made sense after I did this journey to the birthplace of my parents and where my ancestors come from. And I still wonder today, what is cause and effect here? Was this maybe triggered by this constellation, or is the constellation part of a bigger movement which brought me into this setting? Sometime later, I actually shared this story very carefully with my family members and my relatives, because I thought, okay, this is so strange, but maybe I can share it with them. And it was very interesting when I remember I talked to a sister of my mother. My mother died 1992, and so her sister was still alive. And I was talking to her, and she was deeply touched about this. And she was sharing and sharing and sharing about her experience when she was a child. And then I realized this is another aspect of touching circles when we are following this movement and where it takes us, and we kind of share it with our family. Everybody seems to be touched in a very peculiar way. Some family members were very interested and said, okay, when are you going next? Can I come with you? Some people say, yes. I can completely relate to that. And for me, it's still a special feeling when I hear that somebody's coming back and tells the story about this land. So
it seems it engaged the dialogue plus the emotions of the people.
Exactly.
Being
Yes.
with the same roots, same history.
Yeah. It was amazing. No? And so that was a big eye opener for me. And I call it a strangely healing movement. Even though I didn't feel really sick or something, or I didn't feel that I had a problem with that, but somehow this movement brought me into a new resonance with a part of the family that I didn't know about. I didn't even know that, this is a neighboring country to Germany, and that it's so close to the border. Now, in hindsight, looking back, of course, it all makes sense. And also that actually created a lot of interest in historical events. What was there, what was happening, how did people live, what was important for the family, and so on. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Isn't it interesting that, a search gives meaning then to a mission, because you
Yes.
Facilitating people to get in touch with their ancestors, and that you went through the process yourself.
Right.
Is the best thing to do. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, that's
And
really
I'm very much the
amazing.
way you show it.
Yeah. And so then that really started as I was working already in the field of family constellations and organizational constellations. That started really a renewed interest for me. You mentioned it before. So far, until this point, my focus had been on the movements of renewal and innovation for private life, for organizations, and so on. But suddenly I realized these things are somehow connected. And so what I would like to do is share some ideas and some practices with you and the audience about this work in general. So one thing that I realized is it really starts with your own attitude and posture. And this is also very peculiar, very strange. For example, when I'm starting to be very intentional and I'm becoming curious and want to look for something on purpose, I hardly ever get to that point. But when I let it come to me, and I call this the inbound experience, and I'm open to this experience, I suddenly discover more. As if you want to grab like a feather, and the more you try to catch it, the further it moves away.
Let things come to you.
So these I would say these spiritual practices that are important open us for this field and to get into resonance. For those of you who are not familiar with the way of working in family constellations, maybe I can just briefly talk through an example.
Thank you.
But basically the phenomenological approach, as we call it, and that's something that Bert Hellinger used in discovering for example, the orders, systemic orders in families. He used the phenomenological approach and applied to this ideas of the touching circles. The key questions here are, where does it take you? It means the life or the field that you are in, or this kind of mysterious force that is propelling us forward and brings us to places that we didn't imagine. So first of all, we need to be mindful and open about what is happening here. Where does it take me today? What do I encounter? Yeah, what are the people I meet, the things I see? Who do you meet? No? And what do you see and hear?
So
After I realized this, and after these journeys, I found that when I'm paying close attention to whom I'm meeting, I actually found out that many of these meetings are connected in some way to the family history. Very strange. I wouldn't have realized it if I wouldn't have gone through this.
And Thomas, just a question. So when these questions that you put before, that people can also reflect themselves about, is it for during a particular time? Is it in a particular period? Or when we seek for change, for example, or we seek for a renewal, why not? How do you apply this question? Is it a certain context? Is it a matter of time, space, or you see what I'm?
Yeah, it's not something that you switch on like a TV show, right? It's a general attitude and a general approach. So after I realized this, wherever I'm going now, I always try to apply this attitude and get into this resonance. No? Where am I going? Who do I meet? What do I see and hear? And how does it relate maybe to my life, my family's past life, etc.?
Thank you. It's very clear. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's more like a posture, actually, an inner attitude, no? You could say it's some kind of a method, but I think it's not really like a rigid method in that sense. So when we talk about fields, I often talk about the family as a field. Some people call it the family system. I sometimes talk about the family system. We have to understand who is part of our family tree, what are the orders in our family. For example, who are the members? What are the relationship between the family members and between different parts of the family? What is the conscious mind of our family? So what is allowed, what is not allowed in our family? What keeps us together? And if you violate these hidden orders, what happens as a family member? So what are these inherent orders? And the inherent orders in families, that was, I think, the great discovery of Bert Hellinger in his early work, where he discovered certain systemic laws that are prevalent in family systems. Now, my field is more and more in the area of organizations. And here also we have, let's say, orders, not only hierarchical orders, but also systemic orders in organizations. And let's say organizations in general, no? Because it can be a business, an enterprise, a family business, a public sector organization, a political party, and so on. I work with many like these organizations.
They're all relating to people. So organizations are made from people. So stories of people. Yeah.
Exactly. And what is interesting is that these fields are interrelated. So the simple example is what happens at home is somehow related to what then happens in the team and the organization, and vice versa. For example, if the organization is not doing well, you might carry this sickness, if you want, or this not well-being into your family circle. No? If there's, for example, uncertainty in the organization, it has an implication for the family. No?
Behaviors don't stop after the door. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. So to talk a little bit about the family tree, which is the topic about this whole conference here, when we look at the family, for example, as a field or a system, it's clear that we have father and mother. And let's say we have our children, so child 1, 2, 3, and 4. And already with the children, we might realize they have something that is from mother and father, but they also have something on their own, an own property, their own life that they bring to their life path, etc. And some of the children in families behave different. I don't say strange or so, but they behave different. Now, also who belongs also to our family systems are our grandparents on the mother's side, on the father's side. But there are also other family members that we often forget to include. For example, when the parents on the father's side had a child that died, for example, or for example during child labor, during birth, or before, or as an abortion, for example, or for example somebody died tragically in the family. And it's often that this causes a lot of pain, and the family members don't want to look at this. Another situation.
But to carry the energy of the
Yes, for
of the
example. No?
yeah.
So another case is, for example, when there are children from another marriage outside the current marriage. No? For example, the first wife or an affair, whatever. No? So there's the wife, there's a child, and that also belongs to the family. And that is often sometimes what we see in families, that they are excluded somehow. And we see this it especially comes to the surface when we have, for example, inheritance disputes, no? Which I'll talk about a little bit later.
What we call probably the family secrets. It becomes a family secret somehow.
Yeah, for example, no? Family secrets can have multiple dimensions. No? They can also be related, for example, to past events. For example, often when we're working with families and family businesses, and there was an accident 2 or 3 generations back, which caused victims and also caused in some way the enterprise to take an advantage from that, no? Or disregard it. That usually surfaces up at some point in time. Other aspects of families are generations of people. No? And so sometimes when we go back generation and generation, we find something, oh, there's something different. There's something unexplained. And it's very hard to get behind that, because of the further we go back, the more incomplete the information becomes. Now, what is interesting sometimes, that I should say something here, that sometimes when there is a violation of certain orders, for example, somebody becomes excluded, it is often the child that through the behavior or through some sickness, for example, takes the role of this member of the family which is not regarded. And that leads to a certain, what we call an entanglement. This is probably the greatest discovery that Bert Hellinger found in his work with families early on. And it's fascinating also to still see that in many, many constellations to today.
Yeah, so, can we say perhaps to the people who to listen that we don't know whose child, but let's say that the older the family wants harmony, wants peace somehow, then until the event surface, so it tends to come into someone until it can be bring to light. Is it what you relate to? Yeah, thank you.
In his later work, this was another discovery that Bert Hellinger actually made in his work, that the conscious mind of a family field as a whole is trying to bring together what was separated. No? In a very simple way, I can say this, to bring together what was separated. No?
Yeah.
And so sometimes a child or some family member is taken in the service to surface where there is this break, for example, no? Or where there's what we call the entanglement. And entanglements can happen for example, from exclusion, forgetting about family members, disregarding victims of a family business, for example, tragic events, affairs, children outside of marriages, but also fights, war, traumatic experience, and deep conflict also play an important role in families, in larger groups of organizations, sometimes between nations. No?
Indeed, from a smallest circle to the biggest, which is international events, can also be.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a short excursion. I want to show an example how, for example, I'm working with a family or family constellation. Let's say, for example, I have a client I'm working with. First of all, I'm clarifying with the client what the topic is, and I'm getting into resonance so that I can also go with my inner movement to find out what is happening in this field and what is a potential pathway for a systemic solution that could be indicated. And so, for example, I'm taking representatives, a representative of a father, for example, of the grandmother, and maybe a child. No? So it really depends on the situation. It's very different from situation to situation. So I have to be very mindful and very aware as I'm going this, and in resonance, of course, with the situation. And then what I'm telling the representatives is to go with their inner movement, not with an intention, but they go with their inner movement. And that is the core of the family constellation. No?
Indeed.
In the past, the traditional approach used to work a little bit different, but over time, the new way of family constellation has been less directive. And so, for example, this is an example from a constellation, and somebody is feeling, for example, grief or pain. And usually an important sign is if somebody is looking to the floor, then often I'm choosing a representative to represent a dead person, which I'm laying down there on in front of the people, for example. And I can also go to the representatives in this field and ask them about their sensation, about what they experience right now.
Body sensations, emotions.
Yeah, for example, what is the emotion? What do you sense right now? What is feeling? What the clients often say is, wow, this is amazing. This is almost a mirror of what's happening in our family or what happened in our family. So that's this other peculiar way how the work in these fields, in the systems, is suddenly evolving and working.
This is what we call the effect of resonance.
Sorry?
This is what we call the effect of resonance.
Yeah, it's the effect of resonance, of course. And it's the way how fields work. It was actually interesting. A couple of years ago, I had a dinner meeting with Rupert Sheldrake, who was probably known to many people in this audience. Rupert Sheldrake is a biologist in the UK who has done a lot of work with biological systems and animals, for example, but also people. And he was interested in why it's sometimes happening that we have this hunch about something. No? So, for example, you want to call somebody, no? And then suddenly the person is calling you. No? And he was doing many experiments also with animals, for example. So why are dogs barking even though their owner is like just 15 minutes away from the house, etc. So he discovered something that he called the morphogenetic fields, no? This is some kind of a knowing field where some kind of transmission or energy is happening. And this is also in some way related to this work in family systems. So I think we are still far away from really understanding why it works or what is behind this. We can only work with the phenomenological approach to surface what is happening and to surface some dynamics in the system. And this often resembles very, very closely what is happening, even though the representatives that we choose have no idea who they are representing and what is the movement in the family. I wanted to show, maybe to move forward a little bit. So this is the classical way of working in presence or in person seminars. So we choose representatives, they go with their movement. In the times today, and sometimes when I'm working with clients, I'm also using a form of visualization. So what I'm showing here is a representation of how these people are standing to each other. No? So the first wife, and somebody's representing the brother, somebody's representing the client himself, and maybe a child, for example, here.
Mhm.
No? So is exactly the resemblance of this constellation here. What I have found so far is we can use this way also in the current times to expand our work and carry on our work, even though we cannot, um, uh, let's say, be together in presence. So
In person, actually, indeed.
for example, so when we're working with a client, we can use this approach. Here's just an example of, let's say, working with the same client in an online or remote session, and it's doing similar things. Also, we can use this to visualize, to clarify, to demonstrate, and also to document this a little bit for the client, especially when it comes to the solution, the pathway of getting out of such an entanglement. No?
Yeah, documentation is precious. Thomas, this is we can see also constellator.com. Just a little parenthesis that because you developed this program, this is
Yes. Yeah.
this is something which is unique, and this is exclusivity actually right now to see it because it did not exist before that. So I wanted
Yes.
to give you credit about that because it's a tool very precious for the. Actually,
Yeah.
we don't know how long time we will stay between the lockdown and not being in presence. It doesn't mean we are stopped into our work, and we can still facilitate.
Mhm.
And this tool is very important for in the field of people who do work with
Yes.
systemic constellations. Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for highlighting that. I forgot this, but yeah, this actually came during the pandemic. So I was looking for a way to actually make this continuing and making this approach available to many people. There's actually a small free course on my website where you can download the template, you can work with it. I have some guidance around this, so maybe I can show you later on where to find it. No? But the idea was basically to also make a contribution to the field and enable facilitators to keep on carrying on their way forward. I assume that even when the crisis, the so-called pandemic crisis, is over, that we will still be in a situation where we will have more online or virtual work with each other and experiences than in the past. So this will, I think this will persist for maybe for good, or at least for some time. No? So yeah, for those of you who are working in this field, I'd be happy to point you to this resource. No?
Yes, thank you. This is a huge progress.
Yeah. Interestingly, and that comes close to the final topics here, some of the examples that I have encountered that I can work with this approach, for example, are inheritance disputes. So when parents are dying or have died, and the remaining family members are actually fighting over the estate that the parents left behind. For some reason, I have many topics about this right now, and they all seem to share similar patterns. Another is inheritance and succession planning in business, which is a very complex and emotionally engaging topic for family enterprises. Who is there somebody in the family who wants to take over? And what does it mean? What does it mean for the person who is giving and the person who is receiving and puts himself in the service of an enterprise, for example? Brand insights. I recently ran a more intense, what's called a masterclass about application of systemic constellations in marketing and business. So I also demonstrated how to work and surface brand insights. So for when you're creating a brand for your company, your organization, a personal brand, when you're creating a value proposition, etc. There also, this way of working can help us and can inform our decisions. No? So we will get some new perspectives, some new impulses that could guide our thinking. And of course, above all, this work is in the service of reconnecting with family members or lost family members or unknown family members, and also towards a reconciling movement in families and between families. So what I found so far is these touching circles when we follow them. So starting, for example, with this notion about family fields and family constellation, we can find in different areas. So between families and family businesses, for example, or work and career topics. It's something we will talk about tomorrow a little bit more.
Indeed.
Conflict resolution, also deep conflict resolution. When I had the opportunity and the privilege to conduct a seminar about deep conflict in China, in the city of Nanjing, I first really got the real appreciation of the work that Bert Hellinger has done in this field of conflict and peace, for example, because I realized what are the very difficult movements that are happening in a conflict situation. Inheritance is a big topic. Then also home move, I call it home move. So for example, when a family is deciding to go somewhere else, to settle down somewhere else, either work related or through other motivation. This big topic about renewal. Renewal, I think, is not possible alone through technical innovation. Renewal and innovation is first and foremost an inner movement, which enables us to see the path moving forward and also to reconcile it with where we are coming from, our current place, the place of the family, and sometimes way back to the ancestors. The topic about well-being, I saw on the agenda a lot of topics here about well-being or health, in other words. Well-being means for, let's say, the physical health, but also the emotional health, for example. Not only as a private person, but also in organizations. Right now, organizations are going through a very intense period of not so well-being. So
exactly, and a lot of stress.
Yeah, and then a peculiar topic is also about learning. I discovered that when you are following this approach, actually, you have a better chance of, for example, learning a new language and exposing yourself to a new culture, or vice versa. If you have apprehension or a barrier towards a culture, it's almost impossible to learn the language. Very interesting. I think this is just at the beginning of topics right now, no?
This is really unlimited. There is no limitation to explore
right.
all these topics with this process.
Yes. I had planned to talk a little bit about some voices from participants, but I think we can skip through this really quickly. I just want to talk about this one. It was a peculiar instance because at one seminar, I heard somebody saying this magic word, Jelenia Góra. And I like, whoa, wait a second. That's the birthplace of my parents. Jelenia Góra is now a Polish town, Jelenia Góra. It used to called Hirschberg in the past. No? And then I, in the break, I asked the woman, her name was Elizabeth from St. Petersburg in Russia. And she said, yeah, my grandmother was there. Living there, and I go there every year, and every morning when I wake up, I have this big smile on my face. And I said, like, okay, this completely resonates with my experience. So for those of you who are interested, I would encourage you to visit the place of your ancestors once we can travel again and make this experience for yourself. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these. Maybe we can share the slides later. If you want, I can point to some additional resources really quickly, and then we can take some questions if there are some.
Okay,
so, most of the material you can find on my website. This is the website for the Constellation work, constellateur.com. Um, Today I gave this talk. Tomorrow I'm talking a little bit more about how stories impact our work and life decisions. Just now, new is an online experience, an online course calling Touching Circles. So if you go to the website under courses, you will see that this is now open for pre-registration. So it's kind
Early
of
birds.
cool. There is a podcast you'll find on popular platforms such as Apple Podcast, Google, Amazon, Spotify, and many more. And there you'll find some free episodes, for example, about what moves renewal and innovation. There's a guided meditation which follows hypnosystemic approach. And the idea is to get more into resonance with these fields. In next month or in March, I'm planning a follow-up webinar about this topic of touching circles. So this is a free open webinar if you want to join. There are many other webinars about this topic. So upcoming are topics about inheritance and succession planning, and also related to other fields that we are exploring. Finally, for those who are working in organizations, sometimes I'm making talks available as video and PDF for download and audio. So this is a free resource library that you can sign up to, and there you can find some more material. All right, so that was a little bit about the resources.
This is huge resources, and I really invite people with us today and people who will also watch in replay, because I know there are some people from the other side of the ocean and that will take the replay. And the beautiful thing about that, please go and visit constellator.com, because this is a treasure of resources. Thomas is giving a lot of webinars, online webinars available. You can also take courses if you want to become more in the field of professional, but with the webinars, you can have already tons of insights, ideas, and inspirations. Thomas, this is a great, beautiful presentation. This is what I really like about you, is that with very, insightful words and pictures, and you work so much well on the images, that we can really understand what is going on, what are the topic. Even if we don't know about the systemic constellations, we can have more than a glimpse of it. So thank you so much. It's really brilliant presentation for the people who either know or don't know yet. Yes, indeed. So let's see about, we have Celine. I know that she's taking care of the voice of our audience today. And so let's see where is. So Celine, she can sometimes receive emails also as well when people, so. Okay, so actually we don't have yet people who ask questions. But what I know is by experience that I received, it was today after a talk with Fabienne Nisseron. She was talking about, places, as you also talked about a little bit. And we received emails from people, and they said, how can I connect? It was fast in the end to ask my questions, because it was a lot of information as well. So, Thomas, we know that people can find you also on the website, healingthefamilytree.com. There is your bio, there are all the links as you showed, and I saw that Celine sent to our people present right now. She sent the website, constellator.com. Thank you, Celine. And Thomas, I really want to thank you again. It's really such a pleasure to welcome you. It's so nice and understandable and insightful. And I know that people will come up with questions after that. We will send them to you. And I can wish you a beautiful afternoon.
thank you very much. Been a pleasure, and wish you good continuation. And yeah, I think we'll see each other tomorrow at 10 o'clock European time. No? Maybe a little bit early for some people in the Americas. But if people have questions also about the topics today, then I'd be happy to answer some of the questions tomorrow as well.
Yes, indeed. That was a lot of information. I know people will process it and probably, I mean, I took some notes to me, but I will also go through a little bit later. So we show about that. And this is Amel who is saying, merci beaucoup. I know you can speak French, so I say in French to you, merci beaucoup.
Avec plaisir, madame.
Thank you, Thomas. See you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Have a beautiful afternoon. Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.